Where Mr. Giuliani, Senate subcommittee hearing that was held the day before, May 3rd, showed a videotape of a purportedly security tape at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, which is also in Fulton County, the city of Atlanta. Yes. At the time, Mr. Barr asked me that he had made a public statement that he had not seen any widespread election fraud that would question the outcome of the election. And because the videotape and the serious allegation that Mr. Giuliani was making with respect to these suitcaseful of ballots reported in the video, he asked me to find out what I could about it. Since he had envisioned that some days after all that he was going to go to the White House meeting, and then that issue might come up. He asked me to make it a priority to get to the bottom of, just try to substantiate the allegations made by.
The Georgia Secretary of State's office investigated those State Farm Arena allegations and didn't find any evidence of fraud. What did you find when your office conducted its own investigation?
We found that the suitcase full of ballots, the alleged black suitcase that was being seen pulled from under the table, was actually an official lockbox where ballots were kept safe. We found out that there was a mistake in terms of misunderstanding that there were uncounted ballots tonight. And the partisan watchers that was assigned by each of the respective parties were announced to send home. Once they realized the mistake, someone from the Secretary of State's office had indicated that no, we're not done for the night. You need to go ahead and continue counting. So once they packed up the lockbox full of ballots, they brought back the official ballot box again and continued to tally the ballots from the lockbox. Fortunately, during the Senate hearing, Mr. Giuliani played a clip of them pulling out the official ballot box from under the table and referring to that as a smoking gun of fraud in Fulton County. When in actuality, review of the entire video, it showed that that was actually an official ballot box that was kept underneath the tables. And then we saw them pack up because of the announcement that they thought they were done for the night. And then once the announcement was made that you should continue counting, they brought the ballot box down. And they continued to count. We interviewed, the FBI interviewed the individuals that are depicted in the videos. Before really were double, triple counting of ballots, and determined that nothing irregular happened in the county, and the allegations made by Mr. Giuliani were false.
Thank you very much. I'd like to play again testimony from Mr. Donahue, who appeared before the committee before.
Mr. Donahue, you talked at some length about whether or not the White House or the president was informed about the ban from report. On the results of the investigation, the interview that's gone on Fulton County, how would those results have been communicated to the White House, to the president?
I don't know how they were initially communicated. I do know that the president and that wrote.
Okay, so he wasn't informed.
I told the president myself that several times, several conversations, that these allegations about ballot thieves.
Mr. Pack, after you left the U.S. Attorney's Office on January 4th, 2021, did the next U.S. Attorney there, Mr. Trump's personal pick, Bobby Christine, did he investigate any remaining claims of fraud? And if so, did he find any evidence that supported the president's claims of voter fraud?
It's my understanding that Mr. Christie continued to investigate the remaining at the time of my departure, but he was unable to find any evidence of fraud that affected the outcome of the election.
So after investigating the president's and Mr. Giuliani's claims about voter fraud in Georgia, is it your view today that there was no evidence of widespread fraud sufficient to undermine confidence in the outcome of the election in Georgia?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. And I want to thank you also for the service you've given to us. Next, I'd like to turn to President Trump's false allegations about election integrity in Philadelphia. The Attorney General discussed these allegations.
The idea, the president has repeatedly suggested that there was some kind of outpouring of unexpected votes in inner city areas like Philadelphia as recently as January 13th. The NPR said he was asked by the evidence of fraud. He said more people voted in Philadelphia than there were voters, and that was absolute rubbish. Turnout in Philadelphia was in line with the state's turnout, and in fact, it was not as impressive as many suburban counties. And strange that the Philadelphia turnout, it wasn't like there was all these unexpected votes that came out in Philadelphia. So, I think once you actually look at the votes, there's an obvious explanation. From Pennsylvania, Trump.
As a result of that, and the CNN stated that dead voter claims in Pennsylvania were false. You and your staff were subjected to disturbing threats. Can you tell us about that?
The threats prior to that tweet, and on some level it feels almost silly to talk about a tweet, but we can really see the impact they have, because prior to that, the threats were pretty general in nature. Corrupt election officials in Philadelphia are going to get what's coming to them. Or what the Second Amendment is for. You're walking into the lion's den, all sorts of things like that. After the president tweeted at me by name, calling me out the way that he did, the threats became much more specific, much more graphic, and included not just me by name, but included members of my family by name, their ages, our address, pictures of our home, just every bit of detail that you could imagine. That was what changed with that tweet.
Behind me are redacted threats that you received, that you provided to the committee. Now, we redacted portions of the text to protect your family. Mr. Schmidt, I think I speak for all of my colleagues when I say we are deeply sorry for what you and your loved ones have been through. And I also want to thank you for your service to your country and for standing up for the rule of law. I want to thank both Mr. Peck and Mr. Schmidt for their service, their testimony, and for standing up for the rule of law. Now I'd like to turn to another subject. The courts in our country provide a legitimate venue for campaigns to challenge what they view as irregular election practices. Now, courts have the final say in how the law applies to those challenges. We have a renowned legal expert here to address the Trump campaign's activities in court. Mr. Ginsburg, you spent your entire career representing Republicans in election-related litigation. You served as the National Counsel on Republican presidential campaigns in 2000, in 2004, and in 2012. You played a key role in the 2000 Florida recount that led to the Supreme Court's decision in Bush v. Gore. You served as the co-chair of the Presidential Commission on Election Administration. I think it's fair to say you're the most prominent Republican lawyer who's litigated in the election field. Now, you've analyzed the Trump campaign's litigation pretty carefully. What's the normal process for post-election litigation? How is the Trump campaign's different than the kinds of post-election litigation you've been involved in and know about?
Normal course of things, any campaign on the night of the election and days after will do a couple of different things. One is that they'll analyze precinct results to look for abnormalities in the results, and they'll send people to those precincts to ask more questions. Secondly, all campaigns will have poll watchers and poll workers and observers in the polling. So campaigns will talk to those people if they saw any irregularities that could cause problems in the election. Now, the Trump campaign talked pre-election about having 50,000 poll workers. So presumably, they did have eyes on the ground in all these places. And so in the normal course of things, a campaign will analyze the reports that come in. Trump campaign had a couple of basic problems, however. Number one, the 2020 election was not close. In 2000, that was 537 close. This election, the most narrow margin was 10,000 and something in Arizona. And you just don't make up those sorts of numbers in recounts. And when the claims of fraud and irregularities were made, you've heard very compelling testimony from Mr. Stepien, from Matt Morgan, from Alex Cannon about those claims and how they didn't believe it. So that put the Trump campaign on sort of a process of bringing cases without the actual evidence that you have to have in which the process is designed to bring out.
So are you aware of any instance in which a court found the Trump campaign's fraud claims to be credible?
No, there was never that instance. In all the cases that were brought, and I've looked at the more than 60 that include more than 180 counts. And no, simple fact is that the Trump campaign did not make its case.
The Select Committee has identified 62 post-election lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign and his allies between November 4th, 2020 and January 6th, 2021.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Savannah's June 13th, 2022 meeting. I will now ask our newly elected school board president, Roger Moss, to come to the podium to sing God Bless America. Careful.
I know, right? You almost had a fallen school board president. As the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful to a land so fair. As we raise our voices in a silent prayer, God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Roger. That was beautiful. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Elizabeth Gobiel will come up and give us our invocation.
Thank you. If you will, please bow your heads and join me. Dear Heavenly Father, as we recently paused to remember Memorial Day and D-Day, we solemnly reflect on the hefty price of freedom that allows us to gather here safely today. And as we strive to advance the goals of this organization, we seek your continued inspiration to carry out the responsibilities that come with that freedom. For as Nelson Mandela said, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And as Ronald Reagan said, freedom is a fragile thing and is never more than one generation away from extinction. So as we condemn acts of unprovoked aggression around the world, may we also be mindful of lesser encroachments, perhaps closer to home, that can serve over time to erode that precious freedom. And finally, may we use our time here together, humbly guided and inspired by your grace and the blessings of liberty. Amen.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Please be seated. Past President Camille Rousseau will now introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Be careful. Thank you, President Marjorie. I'd like to extend a welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests. I'm going to introduce you. There are a good many of you. If you will, please stand when I call your name and remain standing, and then we will welcome you all as a group together. For visiting Rotarians, Todd Friesman is here from West Chatham Club. Ray Raybeck is here from the Arlington, Virginia Club. Pam Lightsey is here from the Augusta Club. She's a past district governor. Our guest today, Don Tatum, is here with Don Waters. Keith Strigero is here as a guest of Todd Gross. Derek Mallow is here with Jeff Cole. Bart Gobeil is a guest of Elizabeth Gobeil. Ann Allen Westbrook is here as a guest of Todd Bade. Edna Jackson is a guest of Todd's. Tracy Tollison is a guest of Trip Tollison's. Hunter Hall is here with Roger Moss, and Cynthia Craddock is here with Cecilia Russo Turner. Please join me in welcoming all of our guests today.
Thank you, Camille, and thank you all for coming to the transition meeting. But first, we're going to have the mayor come up. So if you are ready, Todd, would you like to please introduce the mayor? Thank you.
Well, thank you, President Marjorie. I can save that for a few more minutes anyway. Well, it's an honor for me to introduce today's speaker, the mayor of the city of Savannah, the Honorable Van Johnson II. Mayor Johnson was elected to office in December 2019 following a successful runoff against incumbent Mayor Eddie DeLoach, and on January the 1st, 2020, a historic year, he became the 67th mayor of our city. Previously, Mayor Johnson had served 4 successful terms as an alderman for Savannah's 1st District and also served as mayor pro tem and vice chairman of council. Mayor Johnson was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, where he graduated from the New York public school system. He holds an undergraduate degree from Savannah State and a graduate degree from Georgia Southern University. A graduate of Leadership Savannah and Leadership Georgia, Mayor Johnson has demonstrated extraordinary leadership during the course of his career. One of his first tests came only 2 months into his tenure as mayor when he had to make the tough decision to cancel the 2020 St. Patrick's Day parade due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And although it was hard for many people to see it at the time, subsequent events such as the widespread infections in New Orleans following the Mardi Gras parade, those events proved that Mayor Johnson had made the right call. This and other smart but tough decisions brought our city safely through the worst public health crisis in a century. That kind of leadership led to Mayor Johnson's election to the board of directors of the National League of Cities. He also served as chair of the advisory board of the National League of Cities, the only Savannian to ever hold that office. Mayor Johnson believes that as a public servant, he has a duty, as he puts it, to advocate on behalf of the least, the last, and the lost, and to promote inclusion and equity for all of Savannah's citizens. Now, what you may not know is that the mayor also has a beautiful baritone singing voice. I learned this because at my advanced age and position in my own institution, I am now the leader of the singing the Star Spangled Banner at the Georgia Day Parade, and I stepped forward to the microphone to sing, and I could hear this beautiful voice coming from behind me, which I typically don't hear from our elected officials. And I looked behind and saw that it was the mayor singing beautifully. So I threatened to invite him to join me in a duet at the next Georgia Day parade. But I think an even better idea would be, now that Roger Moss is going to be the next school board president, maybe the three of us can do a trio at the 2023 Georgia Day parade. Please join me now in giving a warm Rotary Club of Savannah welcome to our mayor and the leader of Georgia's first city, the Honorable Van Johnson. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that, and I'm not sure that's going to happen, but we'll try anyway. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. Thank you, President. I can only say that for a little while longer. Marjorie Young, who has served us admirably. Let's give her a big round of applause. And for all of my friends that I see here, of course, I'd be remiss if I did not call the name of Edna Branch Jackson, who is here as well, as I see Brian Foster and Bill Durst, who served with us on the Savannah City Council. Our city manager is here, Jay Melder, to make sure that I don't say nothing crazy. And then if I do, Chief Mentor is here to make sure that I get out of here quickly. I was given a task or asked to be able to speak about what was on my mind, and that's a very dangerous thing, especially since I have not eaten yet. So here we go. The first thing I wanted to talk about was I woke up this morning being exceedingly grateful to live in a city that we live in. However, living at what Charles Dickens called the best of times and the worst of times at the same time. Have you thought about that? That here we have economic indicators saying we're doing great, economic indicators saying that things are getting worse at the same time. Here in our community, across almost all sectors of our economy, we are firing on multiple cylinders. Trip Tollison is here to my left, who landed the largest economic development deal ever in the history of the state of Georgia. That's a round of applause for that. And we had to take a pin to make his head smaller so we can get it into the door. Yet things and prices continue to go up. And we're trying to figure out how that happens. Is it international, is it national, is it state, or is it local? And how we create ways of synergy to help make that happen. The rising costs of houses and how people live and where they live. You know, be it known that we're all going to have higher taxes this year. And it's not necessarily because of taxation from governments, it's because of valuation. Our index is on fire. And so that means that your property costs more, which means ultimately you pay more. And that's something that we have to continue to have in the back of our heads. So we are looking at those types of things. When I consider the best of times, the worst of times, I'm just blessed to be living in these times. So what was really on my mind when I first woke up was COVID. Yes, the C word. And I said I wouldn't say it anymore, but I have to, because I just want to remind you all that COVID is still here and our numbers are going up. In the last 4 weeks, our community transmission index, what we used to call it, which is the number of cases expressed at a rate per 100,000, has been above the 100. Remember, 100 was that magic number that we talked about with mask mandates. Remember that? Well, our numbers over the last 4 weeks was 134, 160, 210, 272, and I think we were well in the threes for last week. So we haven't been above that, below that magic number of 100 in quite some time. Our number of reported cases, raw numbers, are going up as well. 215, 330, 430, 652, and now we believe we're in the 7 to low 800s. Statewide, our hospitalizations have increased over the last 2 weeks, and our reported deaths are starting to go up. Fortunately, due to vaccination of our community, we are nowhere near the levels that we were before. But remember, there's always a lag in reporting deaths. So we see them happening, but it takes a couple of weeks before we actually see them on our radar. The predominant variant in Georgia was BA.2, .1, 2.1, whatever that is. It's more infectious. And so you will start seeing, if you have not already seen, people around you starting to get sick. You will start seeing that. For those of you that are not boosted, you will find yourself probably getting sicker. For those of you that are boosted, you might have it, but you will see that your symptoms are not as bad as if you were not. So sorry to mess up your lunch, but I mean, I just have to tell the truth for what it is. The good news is for us is that our hospitalizations have still remained relatively flat, and then and we have not had those surges. So our vaccination rates, again, don't really mean much anymore because we're talking about boosting and how that all works out. So that is your friendly report about COVID. Let's still be careful. Remember what got us here. What got us here was keeping the faith and following the science, making sure that we are just taking care of ourselves and we're doing the things that are smart. And that we should do the things that we're smart. And those of us that are older, as we get older, we have to take more care of ourselves. And so I trust that we will continue to do that. The next thing I really wanted to talk about, what was on my mind, was talking about your city of Savannah, your city of Savannah, who is getting better every single day. Your city that is moving in a very, very progressive way. I committed to this community that we would invite more people to the table, and that's what we're doing. As a matter of fact, we were hanging the Pride flag in the Savannah City Hall this month for Pride. And on Monday, next Monday, the city of Savannah will celebrate its first Juneteenth holiday here in our city. We recognize that when you accept people, doesn't mean you have to agree. You just accept and respect the fact that they have a right to be. And if we're going to be the loving, caring, beloved community that I know Savannah is, it has to start with us just recognizing people have a right to be, period. And we, as God's children, have a right, a responsibility to love, period. I don't have to approve of anything that you do. I just love you just because of who you are, just because you're here, just because you're a part of our human family. And so to that end, we've been working through this inclusive lens as we talk about how do we make Savannah more inclusive. And from that came what I call the Real Savannah Task Force that I impaneled in 2020, which was for us to finally have this grown-up conversation about race in Savannah. It's the thing that we whisper about, but we never talked about. And if we're ever going to be the great community that we know we can be, we're going to have to start talking about race and class. And so how do you talk about it in a significant way that makes sense? Well, you have to be able to measure it. You can't fix what you can't measure. Is it real? Is it perceived? Is it assumptions? And so this task force, and you can always see the task force report. I'm very proud of this report. It's a significant report that this task force put out. And you can just go to savannahga.gov/real. And we studied 6 areas about our city, about how we get better and do better. We talked about criminal justice, economic empowerment and development. We talked about education. We talked about environmental justice, and we talked about health. And there were significant recommendations that came from all of those things. And so some of it is the city's responsibility, and we are going soon hiring our first diversity, inclusion, and equity officer to help us to implement not only how we create services and deal with services internally, but also how we handle things externally to make sure that we're looking at it from a fair lens. How do we look at, then externally, some things we don't control, but how we can work with partners, how we can work with our Board of Education to increase our 3rd grade reading rates. How do we work with the county and other partners to make sure we advance early childhood education? That at this point, the city will be a strategic partner in all of it. And how do people live to be able to have places that are affordable for them to live? And how do they get transported from across the county. And yes, I am a fan of public transportation. Because the fact of the matter is, sophisticated cities have sophisticated public transportation systems. And until we can get to where we really need to be, we have to have people to get from Tybee Island all the way to the Highlands and back. We have to. As TRIP continues to grow this mega site, people have to be able to get to Bryan County. Or else what you have is a big lot with a lot of nice stuff on it that people can't get to. And so we're working with our public transportation systems. Our city manager and I were having courageous conversations with folks to be able to say, this is 2022 Savannah, and we have to be able to do better. And so you will see significant work from us doing that. We've involved doing a lot of work in getting back to what we call back to basics. How do we do the things we're supposed to do well? And for years, we had not been doing it as well. But we right-sized that using ARPA funds to do some amazing things. Our employees now have a $15 minimum wage. And we recognize that's not enough. But the fact is, with our 8% raises we were giving across the board, we were at least able to keep up with inflation. So our employees are not left behind. And we're challenging you all to be able to do the same. As we move forward, we're looking for ways to keep housing accessible, affordable, and available for our citizens. Because the fact is that you need people to work for you. And they can't come all the way from Statesboro. They can't come all the way from Beaufort. They need to live in Savannah. And so how do we build that type of infrastructure to be able to do that? The final thing I wanted to talk about, because Tripp told me to hurry up, so I'm gonna hurry up, is always about public safety. I just came back from the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Reno, and strangely enough, mayors from across the country are all talking about the same thing. And we're talking about violent crimes. We're talking about gun crimes in our communities. We're talking about, at this point, the inability of our federal government to help us on the ground, to be able to do things that make sense. We believe that you can preserve Second Amendment rights and protect second graders at the same time. We believe we can do that. We believe that people should not have to bury their kids. And we've had more mass shootings in this country than there are days in our year. Let's be clear, I'm a fan of the Second Amendment. I pack all the time. Maybe right now. But the point of the matter is, the chief will tell you that we've had almost 200 guns stolen out of cars in just the first 6 months of this year. Almost 200 guns. And most of them have been unlocked. Ma'am and sirs, please take your weapon with you, lock your doors. We're not Mayberry anymore. Lock your doors, because these guns are now ending up all over the country. We recognize that we have a issue here with gun violence, but we also recognize that more police officers doesn't help. We tried that, it don't work. It does not work. We recognize that this is a public health emergency. This is an issue of mental health. And then how do we create ways that people, before they make that fatal decision to pull a trigger, how can we stop them from doing that? So from the city of Savannah's standpoint, we recognize we have a role to play. And so although we do deserve it, I think we're about 21% vacancies across the country, which is high for us, but at this point, all of our beats are covered. We're good. We could be gooder. I know I said it. I'm sorry, Mayor Jackson. Gooder. We could be gooder. We recognize that there is still every single law enforcement agency in this nation is having the same problem. So how do we deal with that? We deal with that using what's called an all-of-community approach, recognizing we have to be in neighborhoods, we have to be meeting in families, we have to eliminate barriers. But on the other end of it, we have to have these very strong conversations, as I've sent letters to our judicial partners and our prosecutorial partners, that if you want to pull a trigger in the city of Savannah, you should go away for a very, very long time. We have to insist on that because it makes it bad for everybody. However, for those who want to do better and we want to create roles for you to be able to do better, which is why If you want, we have a child development certificate program, but we're paying for City of Savannah. If you can get a nationally recognized child development certification free if you live in the City of Savannah. We have a kitchen cook credential program here as well, free, because we recognize that we have a role to help people be able to do better if they want to do better. We had 100 forklift certifications at Savannah Tech that the City of Savannah helped to broker as part of one of our land deals. We're recognizing we have to help people do better. But on the other end, for those who don't want to do better, we have to assure them that this is not the place for them. So as I started my remarks, I'm good time, Trip? Okay, all right. That these are the best of times and these are the worst of times. But I'm convinced, as we have done before, that we can get through anything, if we do it together. And I want to tell you how grateful I am to you for your support over the last 2.5 years. This was crazy. I don't know if I would have said, "So help me God," had I known. Well, 2 months from now, you're going to have a pandemic and you're going to have to live in it. But our city has fared marvelously. And for those of you who travel, you know what's happening in other cities. You know what's happening. And the fact is, Savannah is setting the pace for the entire nation. And I don't take any credit for that. I take credit for being in a wonderful community of people who care, people who want to help, people who have asked us, and you have done that even more so. How can we help? And that means the world to me. How can we help, Don, with the early childhood education? How can we help? How can we find ways to help people get to where they need to be? Because we recognize that at the end of the day, we're all in it together. We're all in it together. And to quote the great Pete Lakakis, we're all God's children. And we have a responsibility to use our affluence and our influence to be able to change the trajectory of our entire city. And one part of our city doesn't get there unless all of us get there. And we will arrive together. Thank you all so much. And again, thank you for the honor of serving you.
Mayor, on behalf of your incredible leadership, we want to thank you with a donation to the Herb Traub Foundation. We are so glad that you have been our leader through this really crazy past 2.5 years. So thank you very much.
And the best part about it, the best part about my day is that I look like Ted today. So, we're doing good.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get ready for the transition meeting, I want to go over a few announcements. I was in Houston last week, and so Eddie Culver, thank you for filling in for me. I learned a number of things, that Rotary is growing like crazy. We now have 1.4 million members around the world. Pam, were you here? Were you at the convention? There were only 11,000 people compared to the normal 50,000 people. I think one of the best moments was, well, how many have ever been to an international conference? At the very beginning, they walk across the stage with every single flag. And I learned that Rotary has actually more countries that it represents than the United Nations. So it took over an hour, and it went through A, B, C, it got to the T's. They called Togo, I had to look that up on the map. They called Taiwan, and then they called Ukraine. And people just roared. 11,000 people stood up and cheered for Ukraine. There were actually about 50 people that escaped from Ukraine and were speaking and were there at the conference. And I learned that since February 24th, when the war started, there were all the Rotarians around the world have donated about $15 million to help Ukraine. So it was a great meeting. I also was asked to speak about our trip to Serbia. And if folks like to travel and stay with other people in other countries in homes, their USAID has $2 million earmarked. This is for peace missions. We're going to really be seeing a lot more peace activities with Rotary over the next couple of years. So, and I just want to say also, right after this meeting, if you have signed up to go on the bus over to the new End Market Arena for a tour, we'll be meeting in the front, and hopefully about 1:45 we'll leave. So anyhow, with that, I am going to call past President Ted Kleisner to the podium to start the official transition meeting.
Thank you, President Marjorie. Mr. Mayor, I want to say, number one, thank you for the splendid leadership that you continue to give to our city. Your team and everyone. As a kid who grew up in Chicago, yeah, I know the difference. And I'd rather be in Savannah, that's for darn sure. But my compliments on your sartorial splendor.
Thank you, sir.
My job as immediate past president is to kick off the transition meeting. And first of all, I'd like to start by recognizing all the past presidents who are here in the room. And I would start with Mike Traynor. Please just stand, and then at the end, if everyone could hold their applause. David Rosenblum, John Helmken, Rick Belford, Paul Presley, Eddie Culver, Todd Gross, right up here, Nina Gompels, Steve Stevens, Camille Russo, Holden Hayes, Sam McCatchern, Brian Foster, Rick Burke. A round of applause for these leaders of our club. And now it's my honor as I shed the title immediate past president. That's a great title to have, by the way. Immediate past always works. It's my honor to present soon-to-be past president, President Marjorie. It was my privilege to have a front row seat as your amazing year unfolded over the past 12 months and quickly eclipsed my year. That's what leadership's about. I'm not going to get into Marjorie's year because I'd rather have her give us that retrospective. 21-22 will go down as a record year in so many ways. Thank you for being such a great leader, Marjorie. The podium is yours.
Thank you, past President Ted. Today I'm thinking of two wise things my friend Howard Morrison said to me many years ago. The first was the importance of the we mentality, which our mayor was speaking about, versus the me mentality. He said, as a group, we can accomplish much compared to doing it alone. Howard's second words of wisdom was an analogy of a flock of geese. He said that by flying together in a V formation, the whole flock adds 71% greater range than if each bird flew alone. He was critical of how many services and nonprofits were duplicated in Savannah at the time. Edna's shaking her head. And stressed that if we all worked together, more problems would be solved. He was right. When we unite, when we take action, when we create lasting change across the globe and in our communities, we are what power Rotary to solve problems in the 7 areas of focus. We had a busy year in the community and abroad. Now multiply our efforts by 33,000 other clubs around the world and 1.4 million Rotarians. We are making a difference. We are moving the needle because Rotary has a system and we are problem solvers. Before I run this 3-minute video of our goals, I want to say thank you to these steadfast Rotarians. With you, this formation flew high and flew far, like to Serbia. So thank you to Carolyn, who does everything. Thank you to our 2 officers, Captain and Robert Haas. Thank you to the board of directors, Rick Belford, Mark Dana, Bryn Grant, Holden Hayes, John Helmkin, Dale Parker, Camille Russo, Swan Seiler, Walter Strong, Michael Trainer, and Matt West. We have accomplished a lot this year. Paul and Sue for lining up a year's worth of fantastic weekly programming. Rick, Eddie, and Ted for mentoring me to make sure the traditions of this club are upheld. Thank you to Julie, Anita, and Stagefront for spearheading the Rotary Leadership video series. And thank you, JP. Thank you to Amy for coordinating musicians to sing patriotic songs each week, which often left me in tears. It was so powerful. They were such beautiful voices this year. And thank you to Roger for singing the Ukrainian and Serbian national anthems and singing today. Thank you to Robert for writing really funny briefs in the bulletin each week, and often Kyle would fill in too. And thank you for Jamie for lining up the members to give the invocation each week. Kef and Captain, thank you for helping with the award-winning Rotarian Rotaract Club. Jay and his staff for always being ready to welcome us each week. Josh and Robert for 4 great parties with a purpose. And for Michael for coming up with the ideas for parties with a purpose and the strategic plan. And thank you to Pete, Frank, Bill for going to Serbia with me. We were the first Rotary Club in the world to be part of this peace mission with USAID. So I tried to thank everybody over the past 10 meetings, and I've included some more in the videos. So we've got a 3-minute video. If you could please roll this, it just shows everything we've accomplished this year. So together, we accomplished a lot this year. I encourage you to keep identifying problems and figuring out how to solve them with the power of Rotary. That is what we do best. I am about to now glide out of this V formation and join the flock. Trip, we will be here to support you in all your efforts. We know you will soar to new heights this year. And finally, did you know, besides only having 1 minute left as president, it has been an absolute honor to serve as the 107th president of the Rotary Club of Savannah. I have served this year with love from the bottom of my heart, and I want to thank you for all your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Margie, what an outstanding year. I've got some other things to say when I come back up here, but we want to give you a gift on behalf of the Rotary Club. Margie loves to travel, and she's been a lot of different places, but we want to make sure that she can travel in style. So hold on just a second. Here's a backpack from Toomey and Vidalia. They have a factory there. Wow. And here's a suitcase to match it from Toomey folks. So.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh gosh, thank you.
Yes, that is on my plan to go out and see my daughter. It's been too long.
We also have a plaque that recognizes our past presidents, and again, it says presented Margie Young, President, Rotary Club of Savannah, 2021-2022.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Well, Marjorie, what an amazing year. At the end of your Rotary year, after you've survived and successfully completed 44 Mondays throughout the year, a long sigh of relief, perhaps. Draw a few deep breaths and gather new perspective. But we're in Rotary Service for Life, let me remind you. And it is something that has been part of this club since 1914. Now, it's my pleasure at this point to present Trip Tollison for his oath of office as president of the Rotary Club of Savannah. I was asked by Marjorie to introduce Trip, and it almost seems redundant. Everyone knows Trip, CEO of the Economic Development Authority, the electrifying news that he shared with us a few weeks ago, bringing Hyundai with their new EV plant here. It'll be as transformative for Savannah from now on as this club has been, in keeping with our tradition and Trip's tradition of success. Let me throw in a few things about Trip. He's a University of Georgia graduate. Go Dogs, anyone? Go Dogs. The board, the new board, I should say, of the Rotary Club of Savannah could not have selected a more qualified individual as they elected Trip as the president of the Rotary Club of Savannah. Tripp's litany of accomplishments are far too long for me to recite today. In addition to his accomplishments, let me just say, Tripp is also one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to know. Tripp, I'm going to turn this over to Marjorie to swear you in along with your board.
Thank you, Ted. Come on up, Tripp. I will now administer the oath for the president and then the board. Okay, ready? So I, Tripp Tollison, do solemnly pledge that I will faithfully execute the office of the president of the Rotary Club of Savannah.
I, Tripp Tollison, do solemnly pledge that I will faithfully execute the office of president of the Rotary Club of Savannah.
And that I will, to the best of my ability, support the district governor and Rotary International.
And that I will, to the best of my ability, support the district governor and Rotary International.
And I will, to the best of my ability, administer the duties of the office of the president in a businesslike manner and in accordance with the club's constitution and bylaws.
And I will, to the best of my ability, administer the duties of the office of president in a businesslike manner and in accordance with the club's constitution and bylaws.
Here we go.
I think I lost your pen. Just kidding.
Take care of this. It's been in this club a long time.
Uh-oh.
Okay, stand tight. Yep.
You've done it now.
Thank you.
Okay, to the incoming directors, please stand. Rick Belford, Dale Kreitz Jr., Eddie Deloche, Nina Gumpels, Bryn Grant, Holden Hayes, Fran Kaminsky, David Patterson, Paul Presley, Swan Seiler, and Mike Trainer, and also Jamie McCurry and Tammy Mosley. Please stand. Okay. You have been elected to an important position in the administration of the Rotary Club of Savannah. This is an indication of our esteem and confidence in all that you do. We also believe you will uphold the high traditions of our club and that you will give the best of your executive ability to the furtherance of the interest of our club and carrying forward of the object of Rotary. Will you fulfill the responsibilities of your office to the best of your ability and in accordance with the constitutional documents of this club? I hereby declare the new officers and directors installed, and I give President Tripp Tollison the gavel of a symbol of transfer of the club's administration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The first thing I was told that when I was asked to do this was, you better make sure that you end by 1:30 every Monday. That was my number one, I guess you call it advice, but thank you very much for this incredible honor to serve as your 108th president of the Rotary Club of Savannah. It is indeed an honor to join a list of such distinguished presidents, as you saw earlier, who have done so much, not just for Rotary, but for our entire community. Past President Ted, thank you for your leadership and your wise counsel over the years and for doing the transition ceremony. Mayor, thank you for being here today and for your remarks. Thank you for your partnership and all of our development efforts. Team Savannah is wonderful. Jay's here today too, and I drive him crazy, but I can't thank you for always working with us as we continue to make our region prosper. Past President Marjorie, I bet you're happy to hear that. Past President Marjorie, it's good for you, I'm kidding, great for you. We cannot thank you enough for what you have done for this club. And I will say that I've been a member since 2007, and of all the presidents that we've had, I think that Marjorie's made the most out of her presidency, more so than other past presidents. She has done everything that she's been asked to do, not just for here, but for Rotary International, all the traveling that she's done, all the teaching she's done at conferences. And so, Marjorie, we can't thank you enough for your leadership. I want to thank the new Rotary Board of Directors for choosing me and for their confidence. I'll do my very best for you and for the rest of this club. I can promise you that. I want to thank Jane McCurry for being our Secretary Treasurer, Tammy Mosley for being our Sergeant at Arms. Thank you for stepping up and making this club tremendous. Carolyn Lizelle, where's Carolyn? I think she's here. I look forward to driving you crazy. And I know that you'll be a great recipient of that. So thank you, Carolyn. And finally, I want to thank my two bosses are here today. Paul Hinchy, who's chairman of our board of directors at Savannah Economic Development. Thank you for your leadership and for the board for allowing me to serve. And then, of course, my wife Tracy's here, my other boss. Tracy, thank you for being here and for all your support. It is indeed a privilege to be here today to serve. That is what this is all about, right? Service above self. Yes, we eat a great meal. We do engage in great fellowship. And yes, we do experience wonderful programs. And this is all important aspects to Rotary. But we all acknowledge and certainly cherish the most important reason, the underlying reason, the reason that motivates us to be here, and that is to serve others. It is indeed a blessing and our duty to always help others. And it is with this basic principle that I ask that this club do all that we can, especially next year, to help wipe out homelessness. That is going to be the focus as your president, to do whatever we can throughout the region, the city of Savannah, Jay, the mayor. I want us to really collectively work together to assist in this charge. And that's going to be my top focus as we run through the Rotary Club for this year. I hope that we can stand here in June of 2023 knowing that we made a big difference in this effort. And so we count on everybody in this room, your friends, your colleagues, to step up in this endeavor. As we go forward this year, I'll do my very best to make you proud of this club and that what we do throughout the community and here in our city, our different municipalities, and the region. As we continue to cultivate and maintain the professional leaders of this club, we will stand strong in promoting community service, promote integrity, and advance goodwill, peace, and understanding throughout this region. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm very humbled in this moment and stand ready to serve as your president. Thank you very much. Okay, closing announcements. Whew, got 1 minute. Please remember there will be no meeting next week as we recognize the Juneteenth national holiday. Also, please don't forget to join the club for a bus ride and tour of the in-market arena. We'll be leaving here in about 10 to 15 minutes. And finally, our Rotary new member orientation dinner. We have 20 new members. They're going to be at dinner tonight at 45 Bistro at 5:30, and that is an incredible number. That's outstanding. So please don't forget to be there tonight at 5:30. We stand adjourned. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.